Alrighty, good morning to all my friends out there joining me this morning for today's NBA Eastern Conference Playoff Prop live stream. My name's CJ. If your first time here is today, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you turn on notifications so that when I do go live, you're alerted. You're in the know, you're in the mix. I'll send you a little pop-up on your phone. You'll be like, oh, my favorite YouTube content creator has gone live. And then you'll know to join me on these live streams. And while you're down there hitting the subscribe button, turning on those notifications, you can also smash the like button. We went over our goal, which is 99.5 likes. We do that on a daily basis. We set the line at 99.5. We try to hit the over by the time the live stream ends. So thank you so much for all your continued support and all your help achieving the over on 99.5 likes. We had a pretty decent day yesterday. As far as the tacos go, we had the soccer taco, which you guys voted on, ended up hitting. We had Karl Anthony Towns fall short on his PRA. I voted for the rebounds. Just for the record, I voted on the rebounds. He ended up hitting his regular rebound prop line. So the rebounds at a discount would have been even sweeter. But the PRA fell short for Karl Anthony Towns. But we did get the Devin Booker taco done. I think he went over the discounted point prop in the first half, right? Crushed it real quick. Devin Booker was absolutely on fire in the first half of that game. And then I believe there was a fourth taco, League of Legends taco that hit overnight or early this morning, however you want to look at that. So anyway, tacos, I think yesterday went 3 for 4. So shout out to everybody who voted on those tacos. Great job. We're going to have to continue to do our best when it comes to selecting those tacos in the future. Outside of that, as far as what I did yesterday in the Patreon community, we ended up posting a variety of different MLB pitching props. I think I ended up having 3 hits and 2 misses, so not a bad day. There was one guy, Kyle Gibson, that I originally had going under 5 strikeouts, and then they bumped this line down to 4 almost immediately after I posted that pick. And then at 4, I was like, well, then maybe we should lean toward the over. Anyway, Kyle Gibson ended up going under 4 strikeouts. So I had him going under 5 strikeouts initially. He was bumped down to 4. And then he ended up going under 4 strikeouts as well. So we should have just stayed with the under and not flip-flop. So that's on me. That's my bad. I'll take the L on that one. But otherwise, The MLB strikeout props have been very good to me. I'm going to have to go back and look at my hits and my misses. I think I'm running pretty hot, though. I think I got a pretty good percentage of hits. Anyway, 3 Eastern Conference NBA playoff games tonight. Total of 6 teams, lots of different props, lots of different ways to go. So we'll be getting into those in just a moment. But first, we have to check in with the chat. Thank you so much for being here. Yaz, I see Yaz is number 1. He says first. Absolutely, you're first. Tony Ruiz says, good morning, gang. While you're coming in, please sit down. Hands and legs inside the cart because we're going for a money ride. Smash the like button. I love that. Yeah, it's a money ride on, for some people, what is a holiday today for some people? 420. I know a lot of you guys celebrate out there. If you're celebrating 420, happy 420 day to you. If you know, you know. Todd Live for Sunday says, good morning, CJ. The like has been smashed. Appreciate that. And he's ready to smash again tonight. Great wins for me last night. Let's do it again, boys and girls. Well, I love to hear that, Todd. Thank you so much for your support and smashing that like button. Big Wild Man's in the building. He says, what's up, fam? Jimmy Buckets killed the 3-point prop. Yeah, I think he only needed 1, right? Was that the move? He needed 1 3-point prop. I think he knocked down 3. Had himself a good game. Cat taco tasted like like cat cooked in the carryout. Oh my goodness. Whew, hope you ain't eating no cats out there. Drew Brees says, what's up, Patreon gang in the building? Appreciate you being here, Drew Brees. Chad Norton says, good morning, fellas. Good night last night. Let's get this money. T-Bone's in the building, another one of our Patreon members. Make it work Wednesday. We're going to make it work for you, T-Bone. I like that. Make it work Wednesday. King United says, I'm taking all unders tonight and no one. And the rock means no one can stop me. Daniel Hernandez, anyone have a good promo code I can use? I mean, I can think of one, Curry, if you want to use promo code Curry. Everyday Fantasy says, good morning, everyone. Let's follow our winning ways from yesterday. CP3 is 0 for 12 against referee Scott Foster. Yeah, Scott Foster has a hex on Chris Paul. Kind of weird, right? Desmond's in the building. Shout out to Desmond, providing some winning picks to the community yesterday. Appreciate that, man. One of our valued community members. Aaron Rodgers is here. Suave Los says, hope everyone had a good night last night. Not bad, not bad. Kyle Kaz says, what's up, gang? Smash the like on the way in from my boy CJ. Smash the likes. Appreciate that, Suave Los. Appreciate that, Kyle. Rashawn's in the building. New day, new opportunities. You ain't never lied, brother. It is a new day and new opportunities on the horizon. Paid Bando says, good morning, CJ. Let's get this money. Agent Zero says, hello again, CJ and the NBA fans. Besides all the helpful information, this show is really entertaining. Thanks for all the work, man. I appreciate that. I try to keep it balanced between the information and the entertainment. I mean, if we talked all about numbers and it was just dry numbers all the time, I don't think it would be quite as good of a show. But yeah, we try to find that tricky balance between entertainment and information. We call it infotainment. At least that's what I do. Sean Vega says, been a bad start to the week. Booker played me, but back at it with my Milwaukee Bucks. Let's go chat. Jordan's in the building. Shout out to Jordan. Who else we got in here? Mr. C3P been killing the 2-man power plays. That's the way to go, man. If you want to build a slow and steady bankroll, if you're not trying to chase those crazy 10x payouts, the 2-pick and even the 3-pick power plays can be your friend. Shout out to the prop plug. He's in here. Fume says he's down 6,000. Need a comeback. Whoo. Got to get you out of that hole. Trill Fate, shout out to you. Jackie Paper, what's up? That's a cool name. Jackie Paper. Jimmy Green says, CJ Curry and the Patreon Discord community are absolutely crushing it. So thankful for all the love and help. Best of luck today, everyone. Love it. Love it. Aaron Rodgers says, these playoff 2 picks have been smacking. Good to hear. Yeah, that's the move. The 2 picks are the move. Tony Deans, shout out CJ for all the hard work and dedication. I appreciate you, fam. Well, I appreciate you as well. Chris Stevens is in the building. Shout out to you, another one of our Patreon members. The Calhouns says playoffs equals unders. Unders. Wow, interesting move. Okay. Cold Jelly. What's up, CJ? It's CJ here. Cold Jelly, CJ, and CJ. Yeah, I get it. I'm picking up what you're putting down. No off season says, much love, CJ. Thanks for the unmatched content. Hector's in the building. Good morning, boys. Craig Fields, no worries Wednesday. Let's get the bread, my guy. Love it. Kyle Butler's here. D'Anthony Melton did hit the over on the assist at 1.5. He did. What's the Discord? Well, it's down in the description of the video. So look at the live stream. You go down to the description. That tells a little bit more about what the live stream's about. Go down there. There's links to everything down in the description. Patreon, Discord, PrizePicks if you're not playing on PrizePicks. All of that stuff is down there. Yeah, the Steven Adams was the right money for sure. Right move to be made for the money. I don't know what's going on with Steven Adams, man. That dude has not been a factor in this series so far. Has not been a factor in this series so far. That Hunt boy's here. What's up, Hunt boy? All right, let's get down to business, folks. We got 3 Eastern Conference NBA playoff games tonight. Some good ones. Obviously, we know the way that last game ended between Brooklyn and Boston. The dagger put Brooklyn under. So let's go ahead and take a look at these games. Brooklyn at Boston is the first one of the night. This one tips off at 7 p.m. 226 points between these two teams. That's a pretty nice total. 3.5 point spread. It's favoring the home team, the Boston Celtics in this case. Nothing really to report in terms of injury news. It's pretty much the same old guys out for both clubs. Ben Simmons, Joe Harris for Brooklyn. Then you got Robert the Time Lord Williams out for Boston. They've been running Daniel Tice, Al Horford in their front court. So that'll be a fun game, obviously. Then the next one on the slate is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers at the Toronto Raptors. We got 217 points, so not as high scoring as the first game, but it is a 2-point spread. They expect this game to stay close and competitive. Now, we talked about these two guys last time for the Toronto Raptors, Gary Trent Jr. and Scotty Barnes. Sounds like Scotty Barnes is closer to doubtful than questionable, so I don't expect Scotty Barnes to play today. Gary Trent Jr., however, did end up playing. He was ruled in late despite battling some sort of illness. He did end up taking the floor, was pretty much a non-factor in that game, though. So keep an eye on Gary Trent's status. I do expect him to play, being that he did play last time, but you never know. With Nick Nurse, crazier things have happened. Matisse Thybulle, he is out tonight for the Philadelphia 76ers, so we can expect Danny Green most likely to slot in at that small forward spot. All right, so there's the rundown for that game. And then finally, the third game of the night, the Chicago Bulls and Milwaukee Bucks. I would like to think that the Chicago Bulls can make this series competitive, but I don't know, man. It just doesn't. I mean, despite the pieces that they have, maybe they're really missing Lonzo Ball. I'm not sure what the situation is. Maybe they're just outmanned by the Milwaukee Bucks. 225 points between these two teams, but it is a 10-point spread, by far the largest spread of any of the 3 games happening tonight. So, blowout alert, right? This game could turn into a potential blowout once again. But as far as injury news goes, nothing real crazy happening. George Hill's out for Milwaukee. Lonzo Ball, we talked about him. Thomas, he's out as well for Chicago. So those are your 3 games, all Eastern Conference games. I think Ben Simmons, Kevin, I think Ben Simmons might be getting closer to coming back. They said that he's been cleared for full contact drills, I want to say. They said we could see Ben Simmons back as early as Game 4 of this series. We might be seeing a little bit of Ben Simmons before the playoffs end. I'm just saying. All right, y'all. Let's get down to beeswax. We're going to start with our points props like we typically do. Obviously, we're going to be using props.cash. We're going to be looking at the latest player prop trends. Who's been hitting, the overs, the unders on their various player prop categories. So we start with points. We'll be looking at the last 10 games, getting an idea of the hit rates there. So let's make sure we are signed in here to props.cash. If you want to sign up for props.cash, by the way, you could get 25% off your first month by using code Curry when you check out. Check out the link down in the description of today's video to get started on props.cash. All right. Points props, last 10 games, highest hit rates. That's what we're going to be looking at. Starting things off here for the Brooklyn Nets, Bruce Brown at 11.5 points. He's got a 60% hit rate over the last 10 games. His teammate, Andre Drummond, at 8.5 points, also has a 60% hit rate. We got Wes Matthews of the Milwaukee Bucks at 5.5 points. He's sporting a 60% hit rate, as is Tyrese Maxey, Seth Curry, and Tobias Harris, all at 60%. From there, it starts to drop off a little bit. We got Pascal Siakam at 50%, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, Brooke Lopez, Kyrie Irving, Drew Holiday, Alex Caruso, a bunch of dudes hitting at 50%. Now, the one that I'm immediately thinking of is this guy, OG Anunoby at 18.5 points. We had him at 16.5 points. Obviously, it ended up being a very nice play with Scotty Barnes out and with Gary Trent Jr. basically being out. I know Gary Trent Jr. was playing, but he wasn't really a factor. But let's start things off here by looking at OG Anunoby, because at 18.5 points, I still think that there might be value here. There might be value here. We might be able to just kind of go back to the well with OG Anunoby. We take a look at this season in games without Scotty Barnes. And OG Anunoby at 18.5 points is still perfect. He's still a perfect 7 for 7 in covering his points prop this season in games without Scotty Barnes. 100% hit rate. Not only that, but he's averaging a healthy 25 points per game. I mean, we saw him score 26 points against Philadelphia just a couple nights ago when these teams last met. So I don't think 18.5 points is quite high enough. I think that there's still some room here for OG Anunoby to take the over on him in this case. And then we take a look at his matchups this season against Philadelphia. He's played Philadelphia 3 times. 2 of these games were with Scotty Barnes in the lineup. He's covered 18.5 points in 3 out of 3 games versus Philly this season. So I know they bumped him up 2 points versus where he was 1 game ago at 16.5, but I still think that there's a little bit of upside here with OG Anunoby, being that he scored 20 or more points in every game without Scotty Barnes this year, being that he scored 20 or more points in every game against Philadelphia this year. I think that there's still a chance for OG Anunoby to get back to 19, 20 or more points. So, think he's still in play. Philadelphia's defense, they're just okay. We're not really worried about it. We've seen OG Anunoby continue to hit 20 or more points against this Philadelphia 76ers squad with little to no issue. The good news is that Philadelphia ranks 30th or dead last in the NBA this season at guarding opposing small forwards. So I think Anunoby should be a name we consider going back to once again. Now, at the small forward spot here, last 7 games, we could take a look at the Philadelphia 76ers and how many points they're giving up to small forwards. It's the 4th most, 25.5 points per game. So he needs 19. They're giving up over 25 per game. Again, I think this is still good at 18.5. I still think the matchup is there. I mean, Philadelphia's given up a ton of points to small forwards. We've seen what OG can do. Rinse and repeat. I mean, do we really have to overthink things? And I think we just kind of run it back and see what happens here. Let's get a projection on Anunoby today. I do have him projected at 18.9 points, which is about 19, more than 18.5 for sure. We're seeing him at both 17.5 and 18.5 points, so we are getting a little bit of a more expensive line, I guess you could say, here on PrizePicks at 18.5. At 17.5 would be a no-brainer for me. At 18.5, we're seeing some, some doubt here. We're seeing the betting public minus 145, minus 127, betting the under at 18.5 points. So, I don't get it. I don't know why they're betting the under at 18.5, being that, again, he's just dominated. Maybe they don't have the tools that we have, props.cash, projections, things like that. I don't know what they're betting or what they're basing they're basing their decision on. If it's sound research or if they're just winging it, shooting from the hip. But anyway, I think we could consider OG Anunoby once again. Now, I took the under on Fred VanVleet at 20.5 points last game. He came out red hot in the first half, fell off hard in the second half. He ended up with 20 points. Some of you guys are asking about Fred VanVleet again for points. I don't know, man. I don't know if I trust this guy. I said it in the last video. I ain't trusting Fred VanVleet. I still don't think I trust Fred VanVleet. They've actually bumped VanVleet up to 21.5 points. So let's take a look at this. He was 20.5 points 1 game ago. Now he's 21.5 points. You can see the hit rates over the last 10 games. He's 1 for 10. He had that awesome game against Miami, dropping 29 points in that one. Against Philadelphia this season at 21.5, he's covered this in just 1 out of 3 games. VanVleet's going to get a ton of shots up. We know that. He's going to get a ton of volume. The last time he took the floor, he played nearly 44 minutes, took 23 shots, but shot a terrible percentage, 7 for 23. That's a 30% field goal percentage. He also hoisted up 16 threes, went 5 for 16 from beyond the arc. So if you don't trust Fred VanVleet for points, maybe you look at his 3-point props. If this dude's going to shoot 16 threes again, he's got to make 4 out of 16. I mean, maybe he can get there at a 33% 3-point field goal percentage. He would need to, make 4 out of 16 attempts. But he's going to shoot the ball a lot. The volume's definitely going to be there for Fred VanVleet. But again, if you don't trust him for points, then maybe you consider him for his 3-point props if you're wanting to take a scoring prop for Fred VanVleet. Anyway, we move forward here. We take a look at this matchup against Philadelphia. Over the last 7 games, the 76ers doing a pretty good job against opposing point guards, I would say. They are dead last or first fewest points allowed to the point guard position over the last 7 games, giving up just 20 points per game. So he needs 22. They're only giving up 20. He's going to have a really good shooting night. The volume's going to be there. The shots are going to be there. But the field goal percentage for VanVleet lately has been absolutely terrible. He has not been shooting the ball very well. At 23.8 projected points today, they like him to go over. They meaning Action Labs, which is the projection site here that we have pulled up, part of Fantasy Labs. Now, out on your favorite sports books, he's at 20.5 points, where they're betting the over at 20.5. They expect him to have the same volume and a little bit of a better field goal percentage, which is totally understandable. I get it. At 21.5 points, though, we are seeing some skepticism. They are betting the under at 21.5 points, minus 116, minus 125. So again, I still don't trust Fred VanVleet. I trust that he'll have the volume, but his field goal percentage has been concerning. Very concerning. I did like Fred VanVleet for assists in the last game. He was at 6 in that game. He's now at 6.5. We'll talk about assists in a minute, but that could be an alternative way to go on Fred VanVleet. So anyway, those are a couple of Raptors for you. Pascal Siakam still sitting out there at 25.5 points. Maybe he has a little bit of a better game tonight. I don't know what to do with Siakam. For me, he's more of like a PRA or fantasy points play. He's just kind of a do-it-all type of guy. We know he's going to score. We know he's going to rebound, assist, steals and blocks. Typically, he gets those as well. But who else are you guys wanting to look at from today's NBA slate? Let me know. I'm seeing some Seth Curry love at 11.5 points. Let's look at Seth Curry real quick. Mr. Seth Curry slotting in at the shooting guard spot for this Brooklyn Nets squad. Over the last 10 games at 10.5 points, he has hit the over in 7 out of 10, 70% hit rate. His first game against Boston, not very good. Not very good. He had 9 points, close but no cigar. Against Boston this season, since being dealt to the Brooklyn Nets, he's 1 for 3. Now this game, where he had 22 points, I think the Brooklyn Nets were still shorthanded at that point. So these more recent samples are probably more reliable. He had 8 points at Boston, 9 points at Boston. So he's went over in 2 games as a member of the Brooklyn Nets playing in Boston. Of course, you got the defensive player of the year. I'm talking about Marcus Smart in that backcourt, right? So he's going to be potentially locked up with Seth Curry. Might have him on Kyrie Irving. We'll have to see how things match up in game 2. But you look at these games here. This was when he was still with the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, these 3. And then this game, like I said, is when Brooklyn was still kind of shorthanded. When Brooklyn's at almost full strength here, he's scored 8 and 9 against Boston. So there's that. As far as the Celtics defense, a lot of red here. They are one of the better defensive teams in the league, ranking first in total points allowed, first in field goal percentage allowed, meaning they're giving up a low field goal percentage, 8th in three-pointers allowed, first in three-point field goal percentage allowed, just 8th in free throws allowed, and 10th in guarding opposing point guards. We move forward. We look at Seth Curry here at 11.5 points. The Boston Celtics defense, told you they're good. They're giving up the third fewest points per game to opposing shooting guards at just 16.5. So 16.5 allowed to shooting guards. He needs 12 to hit the over. So, there's a little bit of upside here, but nonetheless, you have to know that Boston's going to be a tough matchup for him. Getting you a projection on Seth Curry. I got him projected for 14.5 points. That's 3 points higher than his line at 11.5. But at 11.5, we're seeing some early signs that the public not liking the over on Seth Curry. They're taking the under on pretty much every sports book out there that has him up at 11.5. So there you go. Any other points props? Al Horford for points. We could take a look at Big Al. He's been a popular PRA play lately, but maybe you could take a look at just his points if you want to go there. 12.5 is the number going up against the Brooklyn Nets front court today. We have not talked about Al Horford, by the way. We have not talked about Al Horford. You did not miss anything Al Horford related. He has not been discussed yet. Al Horford at 12.5 points over the last 10 games. 4 for 10. A 40% hit rate. Now that sounds pretty bad, but when you think about just the last 5 games here, he's got an 80% hit rate. So over the last 5, he's done a much better job at scoring the basketball. We saw him drop 20 points against the Brooklyn Nets in game 1. So that was a nice little scoring output versus the Nets this season. He's played them a total of 5 times. He's covered 12.5 points in 2 out of 5 games. Most recently, 13 against Brooklyn in March. 20, like I said, in the last game. So he's been doing a much better job in terms of scoring here lately in these recent games against the Brooklyn Nets. As far as the defense goes for Brooklyn, they're kind of all over the place. They rank 19th in points allowed, which is a good thing for the Boston Celtics. 8th in field goal percentage, 17th in three-pointers allowed, 8th in three-point field goal percentage allowed. They do allow quite a few free throws, so maybe we target some free throw props, taking the overs on some free throw props against this Brooklyn Nets squad. But they do rank 9th in center defense. Now, they're starting Tice. They're starting Horford at the front court spots. I guess Horford might be more the true center. I don't know. They're kind of interchangeable for me. But as far as the Brooklyn Nets over the last 7 games, points allowed to the center position, they're only giving up 17.3 points per game. So does that impact Daniel Tice more? Does that impact Al Horford more? He needs 13. They're giving up over 17 per game. Let's also take a quick peek at the power forward spot. Brooklyn giving up a lot more points to power forwards, 22.3 points. So if Al Horford is considered more as the power forward, then the matchup against Brooklyn would be a bit easier. So there you go. Projection for Al Horford. You guys are probably wanting to know what the projection is. He's at 14.2 projected points. That's a nice little healthy number versus the 12.5 he's at today. At 12.5 points on every sports book out there, the public liking Big Al to go over 12.5 points as well. So there you go. Andre, Ivan, those of you asking about Al Horford, Darnell, there's a little bit of info for you on some Al Horford points. Let's see. I see some folks mentioning this guy here, Tobias Harris, for points. He's at 15.5. Let's take a look at Tobias Harris. I think we talked about his PRA the last time we discussed the Brooklyn Nets Boston Celtics series. But nonetheless, we're going to be talking about his points today. At 15.5 points, he's got a 60% hit rate. 15.5 does seem a little bit low, but you want to talk about inconsistencies. You look at the last, you take these 2 games away, and then you look at the last 8 prior to the most recent 2 games, and it's just been up or down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Had this kind of crazy pattern going. But the good news is the last couple of games against Toronto, he's really shown up in the scoring department, dropping 26 on April 16th, 20 April 18th. So, Tobias Harris been doing a lot better job here recently scoring the basketball. We look at the last 6 games for Tobias Harris. He's actually covered 4 out of 6 against Toronto this season. 67% hit rate, not too shabby, averaging 16.2 versus the Raptors in that those 6 games. So, as I mentioned, 26 and 20 in the last 2 games. We need him to score 16, just 16 to hit the over. So he might be in another good spot once again. Raptors a little short-handed without Scotty Barnes, with a beat-up, questionable, we'll call him, Gary Trent Jr. I think the matchup gets a little bit easier for Tobias Harris in that case. As far as their defense goes, Raptors 7th in total points allowed, 17th in field goal percentage, 16th and 18th in three-pointers allowed and three-point field goal percentage allowed, 11th in free throws allowed, and 7th against opposing power forwards. So on paper, the matchup looks like it would be a difficult one for Tobias Harris, but he continues to thrive. He continues to prosper despite what looks like a difficult matchup. Now, over the last 7 games, the Toronto Raptors are giving up nearly 24 points per game to power forwards. Again, Harris needs 16. They're giving up about 24. This is a good matchup for Tobias Harris. Moving forward here, getting you a projection on his points. He is projected for a healthy 20.3 points tonight. That's a lot more than 15.5. At 15.5 out on the different sports books, we're seeing the betting public a little torn. We're seeing some mixed signs, mixed signals as far as where they're putting their money down on this 15.5 point prop for Tobias Harris. DraftKings, they're betting the over. FanDuel, they're betting the under. BetMGM, they're betting the under. PointsBet, they're betting the under. And then every other sports book, they're betting the under. So I guess you could say more often than not, they're betting the under on this 15.5 point prop. What are you guys thinking, though? You taking the over or under on Tobias Harris? I mean, it's looking pretty good. The prop plug says, give me one good reason why I shouldn't play Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey for PRAs. All right, we'll talk about those PRAs. I see a couple other points props being mentioned. You guys are wanting to talk about the newly crowned, the newly minted Defensive Player of the Year, the first guard to win Defensive Player of the Year since the glove, Gary Payton. Fun fact, Gary Payton wants a Boston Celtic. Not for very long, but he spent a little time with the Boston Celtics, right? If I'm wrong, let me know. But I believe he had a brief stint with the Boston Celtics. Well, hell, now I gotta find out. Gary Payton, Boston Celtics. I think he was a Celtic at one point. He was. Look at that. I knew it. The glove. Once upon a time, a Boston Celtic himself. Toward the end of his career. The twilight of his career. Anyway, Marcus Smart, 14.5 points. The first guard to win Defensive Player of the Year since the glove, Gary Payton. Let's take a look at his points tonight. Going up against the Brooklyn Nets, he dropped 20 points in Game 1 against the Nets. Taking a look at the last 10 games at 14.5 points, though, he has only covered 14.5 points in 3 out of his last 10 games. So it's not the greatest hit rates in the world for this guy. Not great at all. But against Brooklyn this season, he has shown dominance against the Nets backcourt. He's covered in 4 out of 5 games, dropping 20, 22, 15. Came up short here with 14. It would have been death by the hook, that 0.5 at the end of his 14.5. That's known as the hook. Sometimes that little hook there likes to stand in your way, especially when you're taking an over, right? We hate losing to the hook. But most recently, 20 points against Boston in their first meeting. So things are against Brooklyn, rather. He plays for Boston. 20 points against Brooklyn in their first matchup. Again, the Brooklyn defense, they're kind of all over the place. Not really sure what to expect out of them. It says they rank 29th against opposing shooting guards, which doesn't really impact Marcus Smart. He's more of the point guard on the team. So let's go look at the point guard matchup here. Points allowed by the Brooklyn Nets over the last 7 games, they're giving up over 27 points per game. Marcus Smart needs 15. They're giving up over 27, between 27 and 28, the 4th most in the last 7 games. So I think Marcus Smart's in a pretty good spot here. He's had strong hit rates against Brooklyn throughout the regular season. Had 20 in his last game. He's projected for 14.6, so this projection's not going to, melt your face off or anything. 14.6, just slightly more than 14.5. But at 14.5, we're seeing him over on a couple of different books here, like DraftKings, they're betting the over. BetMGM, they're betting the over. But we're also seeing some action under. Minus 124 to go under on FanDuel. Minus 125 to go under on PointsBet. And then some of these other sports books, they're taking the under there too. But Smart looks like he's in a pretty good spot. He's had strong hit rates versus Brooklyn historically this season. So there's a lot to like there. A lot to like there about Marcus Smart. You taking the over? You taking the under on Smart? Let me know. All right. What other points props do you guys want to talk about? I mean, we've hit on a lot of them. We haven't talked about like any of the big time Brooklyn Nets, the KDs, the Kyries of the world. Of course, Kyrie got himself in a little bit of hot water. He let the birds fly on the Boston Celtics fans. He let those Stone Cold Steve Austin middle fingers come out and told the Boston Celtics fans, F you. So no love lost between Boston and Brooklyn when it comes to Kyrie Irving. Haven't really discussed Joel Embiid at all. I know a couple of you guys are asking about Tyrese Maxey. We could talk about some Tyrese Maxey. I see Almighty Ace wants to discuss some Maxey. We'll talk some Maxey points. But yeah, it seems like to Fume's point, Fume is saying, I'm fading the stars. It seems like a lot of you guys are wanting to kind of get off these stars and get more on some of these role players, these complementary pieces on some of these teams. So let's talk about Tyrese Maxey. He's at 18.5. He's had himself a pretty solid series so far. Maxey, for a while there, came out hot when they first acquired James Harden, and then he kind of cooled off for a little bit. But maybe Tyrese Maxey's back. Maybe he's back. The last 10 games for him have been pretty good. He's hit the over on 18.5 points in 6 out of 10. So there's that. Then we look at the last 5 games. Really the last 6. He's gone 6 of 7 over 18.5 points. He's gone 4 out of 5 at 18.5 points, including going for 38 in game 1 against Toronto, 23 against Toronto in game 2. So maybe he's got the Raptors number. I mean, even going back here to April 7th, 22 against the Raptors. They don't seem to have an answer for Tyrese Maxey. It's almost like they're saying, we're going to let Tyrese Maxey get his. We're going to slow down Embiid, try to slow down Harden, and we're going to let Maxey and Tobias Harris get theirs. We're going to dare those guys, make those guys beat us. And so far, I mean, Tyrese Maxey has been beating the brakes off of the Toronto Raptors this year. He's averaging 23.3 against the Raptors across 6 games, has hit the over on 18.5 in 5 out of 6. 83% hit rate, strong averages. Strong hit rates. Last 2 games, 38 and 23. I mean, he continues to shine. Continues to shine against Toronto. Moving it forward here, taking a look at how many points per game that the Raptors are giving up to shooting guards. You can see it right here. The 6th most points per game in the last 7 games. Nearly 26 points per game allowed to shooting guards. He needs 19. They're giving up 26. I think he's got potential. I think he's got potential to keep things rolling against Toronto tonight. As far as the projection goes, he is projected for about 22 points. 22 points at 18.5. We're seeing the betting public showing faith that Tyrese Maxey keeps the hot hand tonight. Minus 120, minus 122 on some of these sites, even as high as minus 125. So there's a little bit of Tyrese Maxey for you this morning. Otherwise, gang, anything from the Chicago-Milwaukee game? I mean, we're just like not really looking at this. You guys are talking about Wes Matthews. I won't dig in too deep on Wes Matthews just because I don't know. He's Wes Matthews. But 8.8 projected points for Wesley Matthews. He has been starting at the shooting guard spot for the Milwaukee Bucks. So 8.8 points is his projection. And then at 5.5, we're seeing a lot of the betting public taking the over on Wes Matthews at 5.5. T-Bone, you're asking about Nikola Vucevic for points. You know, this isn't a bad look because Vuce has done pretty well against the Milwaukee Bucks this season. I think he was at 16.5 points going back to game 1. Now he's at 17.5 points. Let's take a look at Vucevic. We'll also refresh the PrizePicks board because, you know, as we talk, you guys are locking in picks. PrizePicks is bumping lines. We got to make sure we have the latest props pulled up. But anyway, Nikola Vucevic over the last 10 games at 17.5 points has a 30% hit rate this season. 30% hit rate in the last 10. Excuse me. 30% hit rate in the last 10. But against the Milwaukee Bucks at 17.5 points, the hit rates are sweet. He's got an 80% hit rate. He's covered 17.5 points in 4 out of 5 games. He seems to ball out versus the Bucks. And against Brook Lopez. I went back and looked at some head-to-head matchups. Vucevic versus Lopez. He tends to do very well. Whether that be fantasy points, PRA, points. I mean, he does a little bit of everything. We can look at the PRA real quick too. Vucevic's PRA, I'm not sure what his line is here on PrizePicks. Let's take a look. 30.5. So he's hit the over on his PRA in 3 out of 5 games. So the points have a slightly higher hit rate. So I'd probably lean toward the prop that has the higher hit rate, right? In this case, his points at 17.5. Averaging 18.2 versus Milwaukee this season. Most of these games he's had 19, 22, 24. So he's right around 20 or more points in a lot of these games. So I think Vucevic should probably be considered again at 17.5 points. I don't know that they have really a solution or an answer for him. Milwaukee's defense, pretty good overall. Pretty good. They can be exploited from the 3-point area. So if you wanted to take an over on some 3-point props from the Chicago side, maybe a Zach LaVine, maybe a Vucevic. I think he knocked down a couple of threes versus Milwaukee as well. You could go Vucevic points, maybe Vucevic for his 3-point prop if it's still at 1.5. But yeah, he's done a pretty good job against Milwaukee this season. As far as the Bucks go, points allowed to centers, they are giving up over 26 points per game, despite having some pretty decent big guys like Brook Lopez, like Bobby Portis, even Serge Ibaka sitting out there on the bench. Vucevic is in a good spot. Milwaukee giving up over 26. He needs 18, which hasn't been too difficult for him this year against the Bucks, right? He's been getting it done. His projection today is 21.5 points. At 17.5, we're actually getting him at a bit of a discount or a value versus the sports books. They've all got him listed at 18.5. We're getting him at 17.5. At 18.5, he is a betting favorite to go under, but I'd imagine at 17.5, he would be a betting favorite to go over, especially with a projection of 21.5, especially when you see how well he's done against Milwaukee this season. So I think Vucevic could be a good look. A good look. What else? Gardy Gaston. Now, he's wanting to talk about the big dude from the other side of this game. The big dude from the other side of this game. Brook Lopez, man, who came out absolutely hot. Brook Lopez was the surprise of the first half of the last game when these two teams met. Brook Lopez did his thing. You think Lopez can do that again, though? Do we think Lopez comes out and does what he did again? Let's take a look at Lopez here. The last 10 games for Lopez, he's got a 50% hit rate. It looks kind of ugly until you look at just the last 5. The last 5, he's really been coming on strong here. Hitting the over in 4 out of his last 5 games, 80% hit rate. Even this game against Dallas, he had 14, so he was right there. I mean, you know, he makes a free throw or he makes one more bucket and boom, he's over at 14. But anyway, 28 against Chicago. This was a into the regular season matchup, but 28 against Chicago there, 15, 17, and then 18 in his last game against Chicago. Versus the Bulls this season, he's played them 3 times. He's went over 14.5 points in 2 out of 3. I think this March 22nd matchup, we could probably throw that one out because I don't think his minutes were quite there yet. They didn't ramp his minutes up. He was just kind of coming back into the mix off of the injured reserve. So he only played about 24 minutes in that game, but these last 2 games, 29 against Chicago there, 32. If he's going to get 30 plus minutes, man, he seems to have Chicago and Vucevic's number. Doing a pretty good job at covering 14.5 points in the games in which he sees around 30 plus minutes, right? So we move forward from there. We take a look at the Chicago Bulls. You can see that they're right there, right ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks as far as points allowed to centers. Vucevic, never been a strong defender. Listen, I'm a lifelong Orlando Magic fan. I will tell you, Vucevic improved somewhat as a defender over the course of his career. most of which was spent in Orlando, but he's never been a scary type of defender. He's not going to block a lot of shots. He's just a big barricade out there. But for Brook Lopez, he likes to spend his time shooting those jumpers. He's a sweet shooting 3-point big man. So, if he could get free out there on the perimeter, he could knock down a couple of threes, get a couple of free throws in there. Lopez has been getting the job done. So Chicago giving up over 26 points per game to opposing centers. That's the sixth most. Right ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks here. So we got the Bulls and Bucks both in the top 10 as far as points allowed to centers. So yeah, Vucevic and Lopez probably should both be considered for points props once again tonight. As far as the projection goes on Brook Lopez, he's projected for 17.7 points. But at 14.5, we're seeing some skepticism here amongst the betting community. People out there on these sports books don't like Lopez to go over 14.5 points. They're putting their money down on the under. Minus 120, minus 125, even minus 130 in some cases. So, there you go. Brook Lopez, Brolo. All right, that's enough about points. Points are probably my most favorite way to play. I would say these props, maybe the most predictable, possibly. Some of these other ones, like assists and rebounds, they could get a little funky, a little hairy sometimes. But we're going to talk some assist props. If you have any assist props you want me to take a look at, go ahead and start dropping those in the chat. I'd be happy to take a look at some assist props for you guys. And while you guys are thinking about which assist props you're interested in playing, I'll pull up the trends for you here on props.cash and we'll run through those real quick. Speaking of assists, those of you that are watching, you can give me an assist by slapping that like button if you're enjoying this content, if you're finding it helpful, informative, if it's saving you some time with your player prop research, if it's opening your mind and your eyes to something that maybe you didn't think about before. If you're getting any value whatsoever, hit that like button. Let me know that you're liking what I'm doing here. All right, let's get into these assist props. We got Bruce Brown and Jason Tatum leading the way today. 80% hit rates for both of these guys. Bruce Brown's at 2.5 assists. Jason Tatum, he's at 4.5 assists. So both of these guys in the last 10 games hitting the overs on their assist props at a very high clip. Right behind him is Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. Both of those guys hitting at a 70% hit rate. But for whatever reason, we're not getting either one of those guys up on the board. So the only Sixer assist prop that I'm seeing right now is this guy, Tyrese Maxey and James Harden too. Speaking of James Harden, he's doing a pretty decent job at 60% on 9.5 assists. Maybe we look his way. Tyrese Maxey, he's also sitting at 60% as far as hit rates go. Caruso out there at 3.5 assists. He's got a nice hit rate, 70% as well. Kyrie Irving, which is a name that I've seen come up here so far this morning. Kyrie at 5.5 assists, 70% hit rate. So there's a lot of guys up on the board today for assist props that are hitting at like 70 and 80%. A lot of different ways that we could go here for these assist props. Let's see here. What are we liking for assists? You know what? I think we should start there. I think we should start right here with Pascal Siakam. He ended up with 5 assists in his last game, but, as was mentioned by our man David, aka Who Dat, if you're in our Discord, he came on the live last time and he said, hey, Pascal Siakam, when Scotty Barnes is out, seems to hit the over on his assists more often than not. And he's right. If we go back and look at the 6 games this season in which Siakam has played without Scotty Barnes, he had hit, up until the last game, 5 for 5. 5 for 5 at going over 5.5 assists. So he was at 6 assists last game, ended up with 5. So we lost that one. So today he's at 5.5. Ended up with 5. So maybe he finds that elusive 6th assist today. Maybe he gets back on track, gets back to doing what he was doing in some of these other games, 8, 7, 7, 10, and 12. Averaging 8.2 assists in games without Scotty Barnes this season. Needs 6. Against Philadelphia, He's played Philly twice without Barnes. He's hit the over in one game, and then, of course, the last game he fell short. We take away Scotty Barnes and just look at how he's done against Philly this season. At 5.5 assists, he's hit the over in 3 out of 5 games, so that's a 60% hit rate. So Siakam's doing a pretty good job here. I think it could be a prop that we go back to. Philly's defense ranks 7th in assists allowed, giving up over 23, nearly 24 assists per game. Let's go jump ahead here, take a look at the power forward and center spots. I did notice that they gave Khem Birch some minutes against Joel Embiid. Maybe they do that again tonight. So we'll look at both forward spots, or both big spots, front court spots, power forward and center. We'll start with power forward. As far as assists allowed per game by the Philadelphia 76ers to power forwards, giving up about 3.5. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. As far as where they rank, kind of right in the middle of the league, right? Middle of the pack, kind of an average matchup. Not too hard, not too easy. Then we go to the center position. Last 7 games, Philly's given up about 3.3 assists per game to centers. Again, puts them like right in the middle of the pack. Not a super great matchup by any means. As far as projections go for Siakam, I got him projected for 6 assists. That is more than 5.5. At 5.5 across different sports books, we're seeing him at a big betting favorite, -140. Pretty healthy juice coming in on the over. At 6.5 on a site like PointsBet, they're taking the under at 6.5, -145. So between 5.5 and 6.5 is 6. Maybe he sets up as a 6 assist type of guy tonight. But this could be a good prop to go back to, being that we've seen him just have really nice hit rates without Scotty Barnes. I'll show you that one more time. That 83% hit rate. He had gone 5 games in a row at hitting the over on 5.5 assists up until the last game. Up until that last one. So I don't know. Maybe it's a prop we get back on tonight. After a flop, we go back to a prop, right? So there you go. There's Pascal Siakam for assists. Let's see. Andre Ekberg. Andre Ekberg's asking about some Kyrie Irving assists. He's at 5.5 today, going up against Boston. Let's take a look at Kyrie Irving. He has a pretty nice hit rate over the last 10 games. Definitely in a good spot. We look at the last 10, 70% of those games, he has hit more than 5.5 assists, going 7 for 10. Looking pretty healthy there. Averaging 6 assists per game for the season, 7 per game in the last 10. The last 5 especially been good, 7.6 with an 80% hit rate. And then against Boston this season, he has played them twice. He has hit the over on his 5.5 assist prop in both games. Now, he's not blowing it out of the water, meaning he's not having 8, 9 assists or anything like that. But at 6, he is getting the job done. 2 for 2 against Boston this season. March 6th, and of course, in game 1. 6 in both of those. So Kyrie Irving, definitely going to be one that you should probably consider. Boston does rank first in total assists allowed to opposing teams. So there's that. We know that defensively they're very good. Looking at point guards over the last 7 games, Boston, how many assists are they giving up? About 7 per game. 4th fewest. So when you look at the matchup, you look at it on paper here, you're going to be like, dang, kind of a tough matchup. But, you know, like I said, he may not have a super high ceiling when it comes to assists in this matchup versus Boston. But he has gone 2 for 2 against Boston. So we move forward. We take a look at the projections for Kyrie. Kyrie's sitting at 5.5 today. I've got him projected for 6.7. We're seeing a lot of action coming in on the over at 5.5. I would not be surprised if this prop gets bumped to 6 at some point. -140, -135, -130, even a -134. So the betting public's liking Kyrie Irving over assists today. Maybe you should too. What do you guys think? Some other assist props that you guys are liking. Let's see. Hey, Knicks. Rashad for life. Yeah, Siakam owes me a little bit of money. I'll go back to it. With those types of hit rates without Scotty Barnes, I don't mind going back to Siakam. I'll go back to Siakam. He does owe me a little bit of money, though. Let's see. So we talked Maxey for over on points. You guys are asking about Maxey for assists as well. What do you guys like more, Maxey's assists or Maxey's points? Let me know in the chat. Which one are you feeling more confident in? Let's take a look at Maxey while you guys decide. While you guys decide your favorite way to play Maxey, let's look at his assists. Last 10 games, he's got a 60% hit rate. He's averaging 4.4 per game, so decent. Not bad. Averaging 4.4. Against Toronto this season, at 3.5 assists, he's gone over in 4 out of 6 games, so 67% hit rate. That's not terrible either. So far in this playoff series, he's had 2 assists. April 16th, that's when he had 38 points. And he's had 8 assists. April 18th in game 2. So he's 1 for 2 in this playoff series, 4 for 6 so far against Toronto this year. Jumping ahead, looking at the shooting guard spot, assists allowed by the Toronto Raptors to give it up about 5.3 per game. Giving up 5.3, he needs to find 4 of those 5.3. I think for me so far, I'm leaning more toward the points, being that Toronto's given up, nearly 26 per game, and he's 2 for 2 at covering his points. I don't know. At some point, Maxey's probably going to fail and not cover his points prop, but we'll have to see how this series progresses. But at 3.5 assists, I have him projected for 5.3. And then at 3.5 out on your favorite sports books, he's being bet for the over. They're taking the over on Tyrese Maxey at 3.5. So I see you, Mr. Miggs. Hopefully that helps you out. Let's see. Drew Brees is mentioning Drew Holiday. Drew wants to talk about Drew. Yeah, we haven't shown a lot of love to this Milwaukee-Chicago game just yet, have we? Let's talk about it, though. Drew Holiday sitting at 7 assists. It's kind of hard, right? The Milwaukee Bucks, kind of difficult to figure out from game to game, at least for me. I find them to be somewhat of a challenging team to try and nail down who's going to do what. So when we bump Drew Holiday down to 7 assists, he's hit 7 or better in 7 out of his last 10 games. So technically a 70% hit rate at 7 assists or more. 60% hit rate going over 7 assists. We don't want to push. We would hope that he gets 8 assists. Let's just take a look at the Chicago Bulls here this season and see what he's done. He's played the Bulls a number of 5 times. He's hit 7 or better in 2 out of 5. So not the greatest hit rates, right? Just a 25% hit rate and going over 7 assists. He's only done that one time. That was the beginning of April. 13 assists against Chicago in that one. The first playoff game against the Bulls had 6 dimes. So he didn't cover 7. He didn't cover 8, right? He didn't hit 8. He didn't hit 7. So, yeah, I don't know that I love him for assists. The Bulls defense does give up 17th ranked assists. That's total assists given up to the opposing team. We'll move ahead here. We'll take a look at the point guard position and see what Chicago's doing here. I mean, they're giving up a healthy number of assists per game in the last 7. 6th most, in fact, 10.7 assists per game to point guards in the last 7 games. So you would think that Drew Holiday should have upside in this matchup. But for whatever the reason, for whatever the case may be, he's just not getting it done. He's just not dropping the dimes. They got a lot of ball handlers. Giannis will handle the rock. Chris Middleton, he was kind of a surprise. Didn't really have a great scoring night. Ended up doing better in rebounds and better in assists. He was facilitating more than scoring. So I don't know. Maybe we don't go to Drew Holiday for assists. That's what I'm saying. These Milwaukee Bucks, I don't like putting a ton of them in my entries. They're just a really weird team to figure out. At 7.5 assists, they are betting the under like mad here. Minus 140, minus 145. So the betting public not showing a whole lot of faith in Drew Holiday finding 8 assists tonight. He is projected for 8, however, according to the Action Labs projections. Definitely cross-reference this projection. You got RotoWire, NumberFire, Betting Pros, a number of free sites out there that offer projections for single stat player props. So you can kind of compare how those stack up. Big up, CJ. Appreciate that, Waney. Thanks for being here. Hardest one to tame says, joined your Patreon just a few days ago. Already up a few $100. Definitely worth it. Thanks for all the help and the Discord, man. I love to hear that. Hardest one to tame. I love to hear that, man. I'm glad that $20 to basically get yourself in the door to Patreon has already been paid for multiple times over. I love the fact that you're winning, man. Listen, those who pay the most attention are tapped into the Discord community and who are in those Patreon chat channels that I have set up. They are typically the ones that do the best, that do well, that make money. So definitely pays to participate, I guess you could say, in the community. It's $20 as soon as you sign up, Jordan. And then it automatically renews at the first of the month. So, if you joined right now, you'd have about 10 days. And then it would automatically renew on the first of the month. That's the way it works. Unfortunately, ain't nothing I could do about that. That's just the way Patreon is. I wish they had a way where you could kind of prorate a membership. In other words, if you join now, then it would just carry over until the 20th of the next month. But Patreon, dumb. They dumb. So if you want to wait, get the most bang for your buck, I guess, till May 1st, you could. But we got 10 days to go. I think you could make up $20 in the next 10 days. It's just me. I look at it like this. You play a $10 two-pick power play. You win on that two-pick power. You make $20, right? Boom. Patreon's paid for. It's covered. So you only have to win one $10 two-pick power play over the course of an entire month. Or in this case, if you join today, 10 days, you got 10 days to win one $10 two-pick power play. And then it's paid for. So yeah, it's not $100 or $50 to join Patreon, just $20. It's a $10 two-pick power play. You win once and it's paid for, and then you're free rolling for the rest of the month. So that's how I look at it. Pretty affordable. I think it breaks down to 66 cents per day, less than a cup of coffee. So anyway, yeah, I mean, we could look at some of these other assist props. I don't want to go too deep, too far into the weeds. Bruce Brown, though, some of you folks are asking about Bruce Brown. He's got a really high hit rate at 2.5 assists. I've got it projected for 3.6. He is a betting favorite to go over at minus 135 and minus 140. So really high hit rates for Bruce Brown at 2.5 assists. He's projected to go over again. He is a betting favorite to go over. So there's a lot to like about Bruce Brown as well. Hardest one to tame says, I won $400 yesterday on a two-pick power play. Yeah. If you can't win a two-pick power play for $10 over the course of a month, this might not be for you. This might not be for you. I'm just saying. They bumped OG Anunoby's points down. Are you kidding me? Why would they do that? Let's go look at it. 17.5. Whoa. What are they trying to do? Serve us up a free square? Nah, let me chill. I'm not trying to be a hype beast, but they bumped OG Anunoby down from 18.5 to 17.5. That's just a 1 point bump from the last game where he had 16.5 point prop. Yeah, I think I'm in on OG Anunoby at 17.5. That's kind of weird, huh? That's kind of weird. Is it a setup? They know something we don't. I know, right? You start to get a little skeptical. Get a little skeptical. Anyway, let's move forward. Let's talk these rebounds, gang. Let me know about these rebound props. Is there any rebound props that you guys want me to take a look at? I'll pull up the trends so we can start getting an idea who's been covering their rebound props at a high clip. Yeah, Chris, but Trent Jr. played last game. I know he didn't do a whole lot last game. Shout out to Hoodat, by the way. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. Oh, they're saying Scotty Barnes might be back. I thought he was doubtful. They're saying that he's likely now. Barnes is likely. I wonder if he's going to be limited, though. Maybe he plays but is limited in some way. Anyway, let's get down to some rebounds. Leading the way today at 8.5 rebounds 80% hit rate, Andre Drummond. We got Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, 70% hit rate. Both of the bigs for the Raptors and Sixers been doing a good job at rebounding the basketball. Bruce Brown out there, 5.5, 50%. Jaylen Brown at 50%. Drew Holiday at 50%. Danny Green at 50. Kevin Durant at 50. Chris Middleton at 50. There's a lot of 50s out there. A lot of 50% hitters out there. I mean, Trill Fate, I was on OG Anunoby over at 18.5. I thought 18.5 was still doable. So they're going to give us 17.5. I mean, yeah, I'll take that. Take that 1 point discount. All right, rebounds. You guys are talking Giannis and Vooch. Those are some pretty solid options. Let's start with Giannis because we can't go through this whole live stream and not mention Giannis Antetokounmpo for a single prop. I mean, we got to talk about the Greek Freak at some point, right? So maybe we go right here with his rebounds. Let's start there. Let's go with Giannis for rebounds. His name has not been mentioned for points, has not been mentioned for assists to this point. Maybe the move is taking Giannis for rebounds. Let's take a look at it. He's at 12.5 today. If you're using props.cash, make sure that you use this fun little tool here where you can bump him down. So I bump him down to 12.5 and you see his hit rates improved to 50%. He seems to do a good job at rebounding the basketball against the Bulls for the most part. He's faced them 5 times this season. He's had highs of 16 and 17 rebounds in the games that he's hit. And this is playoff Giannis. Playoff Giannis is a different animal, right? He gets rather freaky during the playoffs. Overall, though, he's averaging 14 rebounds per game against the Bulls this season across 5 different matchups. Giannis is going to be your power forward. The Chicago Bulls are giving up over 13 rebounds per game to opposing power forwards. So we know Brook Lopez is going to be starting. He's not a big-time rebounder. I did play the over on Brook Lopez at 4.5 rebounds last game. And my man ended up coming through late in the game. It was a sweat. He made us wait for it. But eventually, Brook Lopez limped his way past 4.5 rebounds. Anyway, Giannis is in a really good spot. Chicago giving up the second most rebounds to opposing power forwards. So the Greek Freak possibly could be one of those guys that you put on your rebound playlist here. He's projected for 13 rebounds. The betting public, 11 the 12.5. They're betting it up at minus 145 odds. At 13.5, though, a little bit more hesitant. They're backing off the overs at 13.5. They're going under at 13.5 at minus 135. So Giannis, I think, should be considered tonight for a rebound prop going against this Chicago Bulls team. What other rebound props are you guys liking? Somebody else mentioned Vucevic. Vucevic at 10 boards, so he's been either bumped up or bumped down. Let's take a look at Vooch. Vooch typically plays pretty well against the Chicago Bulls. I think we liked his point prop at 17.5. I think for me, that's probably going to be the better way to go, the better look. We look at Vucevic at 10 or more boards over the last 10 games. He's hit 4 out of 10 at 10 or better. Not the greatest hit rates against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's averaging exactly 10 rebounds versus them across 5 different games this season. He did have 17 big boards in game 1 of these playoffs. But overall, not the greatest hit rate. Just 2 for 5 this season, 40% against the Bucks. Bucks defense, they give up the 15th most total rebounds in the league, 10th in offensive, and 18th in defensive rebounds as well. We skip ahead. We go to the center spot. Find the Milwaukee Bucks and look at the last 7 games. They're giving up about 15.5 boards to centers. So that means Vucevic, Tristan Thompson, those are your centers for Chicago. They will benefit from this 15.5 rebound number. That puts them like right in the middle of the pack. It's not like a super plus or great matchup by any means, but definitely doable. We've seen him do it big. Do it big in the last game. At 9.5 boards, he is being bet up at minus 140 on a lot of these books. But at 10.5, kind of like Giannis, they're backing off at 10.5 on the overs. They're going under at 10.5. So over at 9.5, under at 10.5. But his projection is very favorable, 13.2 rebounds. That is his projection, 13.2 rebounds. So there's two big rebounders, Giannis and Vooch. We talked about both of those guys. They both look like they could potentially hit the overs. What other rebound props you guys liking? Clemens is saying Vooch double-double. We got the double-doubles up today? Oh, we don't have Vooch up for double-double. But if you could get Vooch double-double somewhere in his he has a double-double prop somewhere, and that somewhere has Vucevic at 10 rebounds, then there's a little value if they put Vooch double-double up. A double-double prop. What other rebound props here, gang? AJ, Alex Johnson, he wants to know about some Zach LaVine for rebounds. You think little Zach LaVine's going to squirt his way in there and grab himself some rebounds? Let's take a look at LaVine. I mean, you're throwing all them question marks in there like, hey, I found something here with Zach LaVine at 4.5 rebounds. Let's see if you got yourself a winner or a loser on this prop. What do we think on Zach LaVine's rebounds? He's at 4.5. You look at the last 10 games and already it's like, wow, 20% hit rate, not very good. But specifically against Milwaukee, he's played them 3 times. He has hit the over in 2 out of 3. So a 67% hit rate. He's got some pretty big rebounding outputs here. 8 back at the beginning of March, 10th in the last game. But in between that, there was just a 3 rebound game as well. So I don't know that he's going to be a consistent rebounder from the shooting guard spot. You know what I mean? May not be the most consistent guy when it comes to rebounds. At this point, I think I'm looking at taking player props rather. Guys who are good at what they do. So Zach LaVine, we think of him as like a scorer, the 3-point makes, assists. I don't know that I like him for rebounds as much. But a Vucevic, we know he's good at scoring points. He's good at rebounding the basketball. Maybe we just stick to, taking players and props for categories in which these guys excel. Anyway, Chicago Bulls shooting guard here going up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks 7.3 rebounds per game allowed to the shooting guard spot. So he is in a plus matchup here. That's the 5th most rebounds per game by the Milwaukee Bucks. Zach LaVine is projected for 5.2 boards. There is a lot of action coming in on the over for Zach LaVine. I mean, he's minus 140, minus 145 on some of these sites. So a lot of juice coming in, Alex, for the over on Zach LaVine. Yep, there's some definite juice coming in on Vooch at 9.5. That's why they've got him bumped up to 10, over on PrizePicks. Speaking of bumping up, bump those likes up for me. If you haven't hit that like button, keep smashing that thing, man. I need y'all to hit that for me. Hit that like button. We're going for over 99.5 likes. Over 99.5 likes before the live stream ends. Let's see what other rebound props you guys are liking. Agent Zero, Andre Drummond rebounds. We haven't talked about any Drummond, 8.5 boards. Man, I mean, it seems juicy, right? 8.5 rebounds for Andre Drummond. But some of you guys are mentioning maybe he doesn't see the floor quite as much. Maybe his minutes are down a little bit. Let's take a look at Drummond. At 8.5 rebounds, you can see the last 10 games, he's really crushed 8.5 boards. But the last 2 games have been a little bit more of a struggle. Against Boston in game 1, only found 4 rebounds, despite Robert Williams being out and them being, a little undermanned with Horford and Tice. Drummond only found 4 rebounds. But you look at the last 10 games, he's averaging 11 boards, last 5, 9.2. But against Boston, he absolutely does struggle. Now, not all of these games were with the Brooklyn Nets. Some of these games were when he was with the Philadelphia 76ers. Namely, these first 2 games where he had 9 and 8. From there on, 6, 7, and 4, he just doesn't seem to rebound well against Boston. He's went well under 8.5 boards in 3 games as a member of the Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics. So let's take a look at the minutes. You guys are saying that maybe Drummond's minutes are going to be down. I mean, they've been pretty down in the 3 games that he's played since joining the Nets against the Celtics team. 19.6, marking a high for him in terms of minutes. 16.6 back in March, and 17.3. So, I mean, he's typically like in that 15 to 20 minute range. He's just not getting the job done. I mean, maybe he's got his hands full with Tyson, Horford, but for whatever reason, just not rebounding the basketball very well versus Boston. So that's why his line is all the way down at 8.5. Now the Celtics against opposing centers, last 7 games, they're giving up just 11.6 rebounds per game. They're a hell of a team, y'all. Defensively, as far as keeping guys off the boards and all that, Boston's doing very well. They're giving up 11.6. Drummond needs 9. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there for Andre Drummond. As far as the projection goes, he is projected for 9.8 rebounds. Even money on a lot of these books. Slight betting favorite on some of the other ones. I don't know what's up with PointsBet. They're always weird. Their lines are very weird sometimes. I mean, he's a minus 175 to go over 8.5 boards. So I don't know that I'm touching any Andre Drummond over at 8.5 rebounds. So yeah, I mean, Claxton's definitely starting to get minutes, like you're saying, closing out the games. But yeah, I don't think I'm trusting or touching any Andre Drummond rebound props. You guys have asked about some other PRA plays. Let's just go ahead and jump ahead then. We'll talk some PRA. Let me know what PRA options you guys are liking. I mean, a lot of these guys are probably going to come up. The ones we like for points, for rebounds, and for assists individually. These guys will probably show their faces again for PRA. One play that was thrown out there last game was Joel Embiid under PRA. And I think that ended up hitting. I think Embiid, he finished with 42 PRA. For whatever reason, Embiid's PRA just does not hit against Toronto. I know you never feel good about taking the under on a superstar like Joel Embiid, but it is what it is, man. Numbers don't lie. He does not play very well in terms of PRA or fantasy score for that matter against the Toronto Raptors. But you're going to see Embiid at 48.5 PRA. He's got a 70% hit rate on that number. Andre Drummond at 17.5 PRA, 80%. Aaron Gordon doesn't play today. Nikola Jokic doesn't play today. Seth Curry, 16.5 PRA, 70% hit rate for him. You got Drew Holiday, 60% hit rate. And then from Pascal Siakam down, it's a 50% hit rate for a lot of these dudes. So some of these guys are going to be strong PRA options. Some of them you're probably going to want to consider for fantasy points. Basically, the difference between the two, PRA and fantasy points. PRA is exactly what it sounds like. It's points plus rebounds plus assists. You get 1 point for each of those statistics recorded, right? Where fantasy points, things are weighted a little bit differently. It includes points, rebounds, and assists. Points, for every point scored, you get 1 point. Rebounds, I think, are 1.3 for every rebound you get. And then I think assists are at 1.5. So assists really, if you get a guy who's dropping a lot of dimes, I mean, you could rack up fantasy points quickly. Now, on top of that, you also get 3 points for every block, 3 points for every steal for fantasy points. But you do lose a point for every turnover a player has. So when it comes to fantasy points, some guys are better for fantasy points than they are for PRA. The guys that are going to block shots, get their hands on the ball, and steal, those are probably better PRA options. Those that tend to be more assist heavy probably be better fantasy options rather. So your blockers, your stealers, your assisters, probably better for fantasy points than PRA. So let's look at some of the PRA plays that you guys are wanting to talk about here. So Be Great, number 3, is mentioning KD for PRA. And then some of you folks are saying, like Hunter, that KD's fantasy score is probably the best way to go. He could be one of those guys that might be a better fantasy option. Let's just look at his PRA real quick. So KD, last 5 games, 3 for 5. 3 for 5 on the PRA. We look at KD's fantasy score. He's 4 for 5. So a little better hit rates on the fantasy score than the PRA, right? So we'll kind of mush PRA and fantasy score into one category and try to determine, all right, you guys are mentioning this player, maybe he's better for PRA, maybe he's better for fantasy score. In this case, I think just based on the hit rates in the last 5 games, KD might be a better option in terms of fantasy points. I do have a strong fantasy point projection for Kevin Durant. He's at 49 on PrizePicks. I have him projected for 57.5 fantasy points. 57.5 fantasy points. Let's just go look at the Boston Celtics, and in the last 7 games, how many fantasy points they're giving up to the power forward position. They're giving up about 41.5. We'll also look at the small forwards, because KD, he's a small forward playing power forward. Boston's giving up 42 fantasy points. So they're doing a pretty good job as far as limiting fantasy points. But this is Kevin Durant, and we have to always keep that into consideration. So we'll go Kevin Durant, FanDuel points versus, we'll go FanDuel points logs versus Celtics, including playoffs, which is key for you to get all the results there. So against Boston, the last game he only had 32.3 fantasy points. Is that right? Man, that is right. 32.3. So he was well under on his fantasy score. Didn't have a good game. But we go back a little further here. He's had 58.2, 40.8. So he's faced Boston 3 times this season. He's covered his fantasy points in 1 out of 3 games. So just a 33% hit rate. But again, as far as his projections go, Fantasy Labs has him at 57.5 fantasy points tonight. That's a pretty big difference between the 49 on PrizePicks, right? So KD probably better for fantasy points than PRA. Kevin's mentioning another guy here for a PRA play. He's wanting to talk about Alex Caruso, but he's not wanting to go over on Caruso. He says we should be thinking about taking the under on Alex Caruso. Let's take a look at Caruso here. 14.5 PRA for a guy who starts for the Chicago Bulls. Seems doable, right? Seems like he should be able to get that done. But you look at the last 10 games, and more often than not, he is not going over 14.5 points. PRA, rather. He's not going over 14.5 PRA in the last 10 games. He's got just a 30% hit rate. Now, we could also take a look at what he's done against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's played them 4 times. Has only hit the over once, which was way back in January 21st. These more recent games, April 5th, April 17th, 11 and 12 PRA. So maybe you've got a point. Maybe we do take the over on Caruso's PRA. Taking a look at this Bucks squad, we're going to sort by team name. Don't be scared here if things look like they're out of order. We've got them sorted by team name. Milwaukee Bucks giving up about 21 points, about 5.5 rebounds. That's 26.5, and about 7 assists per game. So like 34 PRA roughly. He needs 15. It's definitely doable. The problem is he's playing with Levine, DeRozan, and Vucevic. 3 usage monsters. That's the problem for Caruso, and why it's probably more advantageous to play the under on his PRA at 14.5. So at 14.5, you can see he is a betting favorite to go under 14.5 on all your sports books out there, but he is popping on the projections today. 18.3. They like him to go over. But, the historical data says, nah, we ain't going there. I see Horford being mentioned. I know Horford's been a very popular PRA option. Let's just look at the difference between his PRA hit rates and his fantasy. For PRA, he's 3 for 5, 60%. For fantasy, he is also 3 for 5. So for this guy, you're not seeing any significant difference. It's exactly the same. The games in which he's hit his PRA, he has also hit his fantasy score. So you could take it either way you want it. Any way you want Al Horford for PRA. You could go there either which way. PRA, fantasy points, they're both hitting at the same rate over the last 5 games. Let's just see what he's done, though. against today's opponent. The Milwaukee Bucks this season. I'm sorry, not the Milwaukee Bucks. The Brooklyn Nets this season at 26.5 PRA. He's hit the over in just 1 out of 5 games. 1 out of 5. I think it's important that we look at what he's done in the PRA department without Robert Williams, because I think that's where he really starts to shine a little bit more. At 26.5 PRA, his hit rate's actually not great, 37%. I thought it would be a little bit higher than that. Just 1 for 2 in games against Brooklyn without Robert Williams. Well, maybe it's because his PRA line has come up a bit more, and therefore his hit rates didn't look as sexy, or don't look as sexy now as they did back when he was like in the low 20s. Back when he was, down at like 23.5 PRA. He was hitting at a lot higher hit rate. Anyway, Horford in play. Either way you want to play him. Fantasy points or PRA if you want to go there. Against Brooklyn, their defense given about 48 points per game to opposing centers. Again, Horford, you can make the argument as the power forward, center, tomato. They're giving up about 33. We'll call it about 33 PRA and about 48 fantasy points to centers. As far as power forwards go, they're giving up about 46.5 fantasy points per game. And then the PRA is sitting out there at about 34. We'll call it about 36 PRA for power forward. So he's at a pretty decent spot. Either which way you want to take Horford. Got him projected for 29.6 PRA. That's more than the 26.5. We're seeing the public bet the over on 26.5 PRA. And then in case you were wondering about his fantasy score, I've got him projected for 40 fantasy points. 40.7. He's at 36. So overs for Horford looking like the way to go. Let's see. Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown's been a very popular PRA option. Bruce Brown today is at 20.5 PRA. He's hit in 3 out of his last 5. We could also take a look at fantasy score for Brown. Probably be easier if I just punched his name in here, huh? Well, let's go with Bruce, since there's a Jaylen Brown. Anyway, his PRA, 3 out of the last 5. Fantasy score, same thing kind of with Horford, right? Same hit rates, whether you go fantasy score at 26, PRA at 20.5. Let's just get a fantasy score projection for Bruce Brown. I got him at 36 fantasy points. So that's 10 fantasy points higher than where he is at today at 26. 10 fantasy point difference. Okay. Well, I guess it's worth a shot when there's a 10 fantasy point difference. Let's also take a look at his PRA. Bruce Brown, 26.1 projected PRA. So it seems like the models for Fantasy Labs, Action Labs are really liking some Bruce Brown today. Now, he is at 21.5 PRA on some sports books. They're betting the under at 21.5, but we're getting him at 20.5. And at 20.5, he is a betting favorite to go over. So, there you go. What else? Let's see. What other PRA options? Bobby Portis PRA being mentioned. Seth Curry PRA being mentioned. We're just going to quickly look at these guys because, you guys are throwing out a lot of different options. Seth Curry at 16.5 PRA has hit the over in 4 out of 5. Now, when I think of Curry, I don't think of him as a major steals and blocks guy, so I'm going to assume that probably the PRA is the way to go. Let's look at his fantasy. Yeah, he's actually got a higher hit rate for the PRA, so I'd probably lean toward that, as the way to play Seth Curry in this case. I got him projected for 21.3 PRA. You are paying a little higher here on PrizePicks today at 16.5. He's at 15.5 on a couple of the major sports books. At 15.5, they're betting the over. Minus 125 to go over at 15.5. So at 16.5, they're betting the under. But he is projected to go over, so there's that. Fraga Balance wants to know about some Jaylen Brown fantasy score. What can Brown do for you? Let's look at Jaylen Brown. Let's first start by looking at the comparison to the hit rate. So at 37.5 PRA, 40% hit rate there. At 42 fantasy points, 80%. So I would say that Jaylen Brown over the last 5 games is a better fantasy point play as far as hit rates, just looking at the hit rates, than a PRA play. So Brown for me would definitely be more on the fantasy point side. Looking at the Brooklyn. Looking at the Brooklyn Nets, fantasy points allowed over the last 7 games to shooting guards. They're giving up about 40 to 41 fantasy points per game. He needs 42.1. They're giving up about 40.6 to shooting guards. So let's get you a projection on Jaylen Brown. He's projected for 44.7, so not seeing, quite the difference or differential on Jaylen Brown that we did on some of these other players, like 10 fantasy points difference or whatever. So he's at 44.7, projected for 42 on PrizePicks, so the over would probably be the way to go. D'Angelo Sinning. He's asking about Spicy P. Pascal Siakam, assists or fantasy? I was really on Pascal Siakam's fantasy points last game. He had a tremendous hit rate on his fantasy score. He's at 47 again today. I was really on that, and he let us down. He's 4 out of his last 5, though, at covering 47 fantasy points. Just 3 out of his last 5 on PRA. So, again, more of a fantasy point guy because he is pretty good at steals, pretty good at blocks. As far as the matchup goes, if he starts at power forward going up against Philly, the 76ers giving up about 44 to 45 fantasy points per game to opposing power forwards. So there's that. Let's get a projection here for Siakam. Projected for 49.8. So he's like 2 to 3 fantasy points projected, 2 to 3 fantasy points higher than the 47. Maybe we go back to Siakam. I don't mind going back to him for his assists at 5.5. He let us down last game, had a tremendous hit rate, and then kind of came crashing back down to earth. So, EJ, you're asking about Bobby Portis. Let's look at Bobby Portis. He's coming off the bench these days behind Brook Lopez. We don't have a fantasy point prop up for Bobby Portis, so you don't have an option here. You have to go PRA for Bobby Portis at 18.5. So just quickly looking at this one, Portis going to be your center, your power forward. Former team, Chicago Bulls. Just a little chip on his shoulder, probably playing against the Chicago Bulls. For centers, they're giving up 26 to 27 points, about 10 rebounds. We'll call it 37, plus 3 assists, about 40 PRA. About 40 PRA, so that's pretty healthy if you're a center. Power forward, still looking really good. About 22 points, 13 rebounds. It's like 35 plus 5 assists, about 40 PRA given up to power forward. So Portis, not looking too shabby. Not looking too shabby for a PRA play. Lots of upside in this matchup. At 18.5, he's a betting favorite at minus 130 to go over. And we got a good projection for him at 22.4. Kyrie Irving for fantasy points or PRA. Well, he's got an 80% hit rate at 47 fantasy points. So that's good. PRA, 60%. Kyrie's actually pretty good at finding some steals, maybe a block. Defensively, he puts up some points in the stocks department, steals and blocks. So 47 fantasy points for Kyrie would probably be the move for me versus his PRA. When you take a look at the matchup, Boston's given up over 49 fantasy points per game in the last 7 to point guard. So it is a top 10 most fantasy points average to the point guard position in the last 7 games. So I think Kyrie could make for a nice little fantasy point play. And then I got him projected for 51.4 fantasy points. So a few points higher than the 47. So if you're going to go Kyrie, PRA, or fantasy, I'd probably lean toward the fantasy, being that he gets steals and blocks. Yeah. All right. Let's jump ahead then from there. So we talked some PRA, we talked some fantasy score. How about some 3-point makes? Is there any 3-point props that you guys are liking? I mentioned Fred VanVleet earlier because he attempted, I think I said 16 threes the last game. He shot 16 3-pointers. If he does that again, which he may not because you guys are saying now Scotty Barnes might play. Gary Trent Jr. did end up playing in the last game. But if he's going to shoot 16 3-pointers, yeah, I think I feel okay about taking a shot on Fred VanVleet at 3.5 3-point makes. So we had mentioned him, but let's look at the trends for the rest of the players on today's slate. Get my act together here. Let me get my act together here. Appreciate you guys for being here, by the way. There we go. There we go. We're getting it. We're getting there. We're getting there. Last 10 games. Boom. All right. So your top 3-point makers over the last 10 games. Bruce Brown at 0.5, 70% hit rate. Tobias Harris at 1.5. I played this one last game and it ended up hitting. 70% hit rate on his 3-point makes. Kyrie Irving at 3.5. He's got a 60% hit rate. We're getting him at 3 today versus Boston. Al Horford at 1.5 3-point makes, 60% hit rate. That's not bad. Who else we got? Chris Middleton. Yeah, he's not up on the... Well, he is up on the board, but Chris Middleton did not look good in game 1. But at 2.5 3-point makes, 60% hit rate. Drew Holiday at 1.5. He's also got a 60% hit rate. Giannis, 60%. Gary Trent Jr., 60%. OG Anunoby, we could look his way. I still think I like the points a little bit better at 17.5, but, you know, they kind of go hand in hand, right? If OG's going to be scoring points, he's probably going to have to knock down some threes to hit the over. He had himself a great game last game, by the way. OG was balling. He's got a nice little game. I like OG Anunoby's game. He just needs to stay healthy. Anyway, Anunoby at 2.5 3-point makes has hit the over in 4 out of 10. Excuse me. Of course, he missed some time. So since returning on March 24th, we can shave off these 2 games if you want. He's hit the over on 2.5 in 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 8. So like a 50% hit rate. Against Philadelphia this season, he's 1 for 3. This is, again, why I kind of like his points a little bit more. Because against Philadelphia at 17.5 points, he's hit the over in 3 out of 3. I just like his points more than his 3-point makes personally. But you could take a shot on his 3-point makes if you wanted. Projection time. Let's see. What do I have here for Mr. OG Anunoby? I have him projected for 2.6 3-point makes. He is a betting favorite to go over at 2.5. You're saying look at his 3-point makes without Scotty Barnes? Well, we could do that. There you go. 100%. Just like his points. 100%. So 100% on the threes, 100% on the points. So yeah, either way you want to go. Jordan Barnett says Kevin Durant's hitting at least 2 threes tonight. I'm taking it. Okay. Let's look at Kevin Durant real quick. Durant didn't have the greatest game in game 1 against Boston. We know Boston, tough team. Man, Kevin Durant's really going to have to, he's going to have to step up, man. He is going to have to step up in a big way. Got to get right after that last game that he had. Decent, but not to the Kevin Durant standards. So Kevin Durant at 2 or more 3-point makes. He's hit 2 or more in 6 out of his last 10, 60% hit rate versus Boston this season. He's played them 3 times. He's only hit the over on 2 3-point makes him 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3. But I'm kind of with you on this. I mean, I think at 2 3-point makes, I mean, he's going to have to shoot and score in order for this game to be a different outcome. But at 2.5, he is a betting favorite to go under, -180 and -185. He's projected for 2.3. He'll need 3 to hit the over. Yep. Fume, you're going to take the under on Fred VanVleet at 3.5, even though he shot 16 threes. Yeah, we're waiting on the Toronto Raptors news. Let's talk about Tobias Harris because he has been knocking down some threes lately. At 1.5, he's got to make 2. He's been really stepping his game up over the last couple of games. So the last 10 for Tobias Harris, he's got a 70% hit rate at knocking down at least 2 threes. Versus Toronto, the last 3 times he's played the Raptors, he's hit 2 or more in all 3 games. Knocking down 2 at the start of April. And then in these 2 playoff games, he's knocked down 3 in both of those. So he's been doing very well as far as knocking down threes against the Raptors. Projection, 1.7. He is a betting favorite to go over at 1.5 3-point makes. Otherwise, I mean, you know, that's about it. That's about it for 3-point. Scotty Sal, yeah, we're still waiting, man. We don't know. I don't know what's going on with Scotty Barnes. As far as free throw makes go, they have been blowing the whistle a lot in these playoffs. I don't know if you guys have noticed or not. Siakam, he knocked down 6 free throws against Philadelphia. He's going to be a high usage guy, especially if Barnes is out and or Trent. Fred VanVleet, probably not going to go there. Even without Barnes and a limited Gary Trent last game, he only knocked down 1 free throw, so I'm not too interested in that. DeRozan, he's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. Typically he is. He's been a pretty good free throw maker over the course of the season. Hasn't really been getting the job done in the last 3 games, though. Had 6 against Milwaukee, so close but no cigar there. Giannis, again, not really getting the job done at 8 free throw makes. Zach LaVine, man, a lot of these free throw makes are not looking very good tonight. Not looking great. Jason Tatum, all right, he had 10 against Brooklyn in the first game. How about Jaylen Brown? Well, he's pushed or went under in every game in his last 5 games. He has not gone over. That's an interesting looking game log. KD, not great either in the last couple. He's going to have to be more aggressive as well. So, I don't know. I usually don't play a whole lot of free throw props. Blocks and steals. I don't play a lot of these either. Let's just look at the hit rates for him, though. You got Andre Drummond at 1.5. Again, we talked about Andre Drummond's minutes being somewhat down and limited. He does have an 80% hit rate, though, in his last 10 games at 1.5 blocks and steals. So even in limited minutes, like against Boston, he had 3 blocks and steals there. So 80% hit rate for Andre Drummond. That's looking pretty nice. Kevin Durant at 2.5, a 40% hit rate. He's at 2 on PrizePicks. Marcus Smart at 1.5, 50% hit rate, but he's at 2 on PrizePicks. Al Horford at 2.5. He's at 2 on PrizePicks. 40% hit rate at 2.5, though. And then we could look at Embiid and Giannis. Embiid at 2.5 blocks and steals. 40%. Just okay. Just okay. Nothing great there. And then Giannis to wrap things up here. Giannis at 2.5. 50% hit rate. So Andre Drummond's leading the way by far at the 80% hit rate, but we did talk about how his minutes somewhat limited, somewhat down. But an 80% hit rate's always a pretty nice move. Double doubles, as far as double doubles go, I mean, we just have to take a look at the other prop lines for these guys. So in order for Al Horford to hit his double double, he's probably going to get it in the points and rebounds column. Pascal Siakam, somewhat of a triple-double threat, could get it 3 different ways: points, rebounds, or assists. But it's likely going to be more in the points and rebounds for him. So let's look at the rebound props, because that's really going to be the question, right? So you're getting a little bit of value by taking the Al Horford double-double. So if you like Al Horford to go for 10 rebounds tonight, take the double-double instead of the rebounds. Because if he lands on exactly 10 rebounds, you'd end up in a tie or a push. But if he lands on 10 rebounds and you took the over on the double-double, there is no tie or push on double-doubles. It's either you win or you don't. So if you like Al Horford's rebounds, don't take the rebounds. Take the double-double, where you're getting basically a half a rebound of value. Okay? Because it's almost a give me, a certainty that he's going to score 10 points. At least I think he'll score 10 points. And then Pascal Siakam at 0.5 double-doubles. Let's look at his rebounds tonight. So he's at 9 rebounds. Let's see. He's at 9 rebounds. So if you think he goes under 10 rebounds, I would say take the under on his double-double. So, I don't know. There you go. That's it, guys. I'm tapped out. I am tapped out for the day. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Good luck if you're out there. I'm going to go look at some MLB props, some MLB plays, and see if I could dig anything up for some of these baseball games that are starting soon. So if you're in Patreon, if you're in Discord, keep an eye out. Keep an eye out in Discord. If I see any plays that I'm liking for MLB props, I will definitely be posting those as soon as I get off of here. I'll start looking at some stuff. Appreciate all you guys. Thanks so much for the support. Drop the like on your way out. And good luck tonight if you're playing any player props. Till next time. Peace.